Okay, friends, imagine the following scenario. Your parents, after looking at last semester's grades, offer you a solution because they say to you, look, we want better grades than what you got last semester. So we're going to pay you $3,000 for every A that you get this semester. Okay, $3,000 per A. How many of us would be more strongly motivated to get an A in our classes if we were getting $3,000 per A? That's almost everybody, except Matthew, who I'm not sure is paying attention right now. All right, almost everybody. Okay? You know what? Did you know you're actually being paid for your grades? You are being paid for your grades in the form of your income at your first job following graduation. It's just not immediate, tangible, explicit payment. It feels several years off. And so it's less motivating because the money is not sitting there right in front of you in a tangible way. Okay, but it is very much something that you will actually be paid for in terms of GPA and what your employers think of how you did as an undergrad, etc. On page 51 in the incentives chapter, Sandel looks at the prospect of paying kids for good grades, to use a market-based solution to try to promote good behavior in an arena of human life that has not traditionally been governed by market norms, namely grades. Okay, but unfortunately, the studies here have been pretty mixed. Let me read them to you on 52 and 53. In New York City, participating schools paid fourth graders $25 to score well on standardized tests. Okay, but in New York City, paying kids for good test scores did nothing to improve their academic performance. In Chicago, they offered ninth graders cash for getting good grades in their courses. $50 for an A, $35 for a B, $20 for a C.
Wait, where you said?
This is in Chicago.
Then public schools or?
This is a study that was done in public schools in Chicago, yeah.
Okay.
The cash for good grades in Chicago led to better attendance, but no improvement on standardized tests. In Washington, D.C., schools paid middle school students cash rewards for attendance, good behavior, and turning in their homework. Conscientious kids could make up to $100 every 2 weeks. The payments helped some students in Washington, D.C. achieve higher reading scores. Other students showed no change. Finally, in Dallas, they paid second graders $2 for each book they read. To collect cash, the students have to take a computerized quiz to prove they've read the book. The cash worked very well with Dallas second graders, Texans. The kids who got paid $2 per book wound up with higher reading comprehension scores at the end of the year. Those market-driven Texans. Okay, so the studies appear to show mixed results when it comes to actually incentivizing good behavior through grades. Let me give you one more example, and then we're going to step back and take a look at the theory for this second chapter on incentives. Healthcare, this is on page 55, is another area where cash incentives are in vogue. Increasingly, doctors, insurance companies, and employers are paying people to be healthy, paying them to take their medications, paying them to quit smoking, paying them to lose weight. You might think that avoiding disease or life-threatening ailments would be motivation enough, but surprisingly, that's often not the case. 1/3 to 1/2 of patients in the United States fail to take their medications as prescribed. That's an incredible number. Okay, so then there are a number of examples that send out lists of companies trying to promote health through cash incentives. For instance, in 2009, General Electric began paying its employees to quit smoking, $750 if they could quit for as long as a year. Okay, the Safeway grocery store chain offers lower health insurance premiums to workers who don't smoke and who keep their weight, blood pressure, and cholesterol under control, etc., etc. Okay, so from a certain point of view, this seems like a reasonable set of solutions to some common social coordination problems. We want to incentivize good grades. We want to incentivize health. And it's really, from a capitalist market point of view, a matter of costs and benefits. Okay, so let's look at these examples with two questions in mind. Question number one, does it work? And question number two, is it objectionable? In other words, do the incentive payments work? And question number two, is moving capitalist markets and the norms that come with them into non-market-based arenas an objectionable thing? And if so, on what grounds? The health bribes seem to work. I didn't read you some of the stats, but they seem to work. They seem to work better than the grade bribes. The grade bribes have mixed results. The health bribes seem to work. Perhaps the children are not sufficiently motivated by money, whereas the adults are. I've seen that before, because the children have their basic needs taken care of, whereas the adults don't. That could explain the difference. There are two objections, though, when we ask this question, is it objectionable? Two objections that often are raised about introducing market-based norms. One is a coercion objection, and the other is a bribery objection. We've looked at this weakness of markets. We've looked at the corruption weakness, or the discrimination against people who don't have means, the corruption weakness. Let's now look at a third weakness, and then a fourth. The third one is coercion. It's not hard coercion because there's no physical coercion involved. Nobody is saying you're going to get thrown in jail if you don't do this. Soft and mental is the variety of coercion that's going on here. We'll look at bribery momentarily as a corruption. Okay, coercion, soft and mental. So what do we think? Is it coercive in a way that's objectionable to pay people to make certain kinds of health decisions? It's not hard coercion. Nobody is forcing anyone to make a certain health decision. But, finances are softly coercive. When the government raises taxes on cigarettes, that's soft coercion. Because some customers are going to look at their checkbook and look at their bank account this week and decide, well, I can't afford a pack of smokes right now. Others will be like, give me some. It doesn't matter what the price is. The objection against using market-based thinking to bring about positive behavioral changes is that this is actually coercive and undermines people's freedom in a kind of a soft and light sort of way, but a way that is dangerous. Okay, let me give you one more example here. This is from the world's oldest institution. Why do you think people who have freedom of choice sometimes choose prostitution? Because they're out of other options, right? Because of the money. There's a certain coercive element to the market dynamics there. And the objection is that even in capitalist markets, there can be coercion. It's just not the jailing kind or the beating someone with a bludgeon kind. It's always soft coercion. What do we think of that objection with regard to the examples that are listed in the text? Do we agree? Disagree? Can capitalist markets be coercive? Okay, good. Can you expand on that just a little bit for us, Diana?
You're being forced
Mm-hmm.
That's most likely benefit of.
Okay. Good. Sure. Yeah, coercion can be of great value. So, when I was a little kid, my dad wanted to teach me to play chess, and I wasn't motivated at the time, and so he offered me basically a market-based solution. He paid me in candy, though, not in money. Candy was more motivating to me at the time. I played him chess, and he played just hard enough to beat me some of the time, but to let me win some of the time. And over time, this actually worked in this case, I began to see the value of the game for its own sake. And eventually, as I got a little bit older, it took several years, I started playing him chess just for the sake of playing and not for the sake of the candy. He used softly coercive means to bring about good behavior in that case. The good behavior in question that he wanted was to teach me to play the game of chess. So I'm totally with you, Diana. I've got no problem with this objection as long as the coercion is for things that are in the best interests of the participant. But if it's coercion that's not in the best interest of the participant, like the world's oldest institution, that's a problem, I think. So I think it all depends on what the behavior is that is being brought about by means of the soft coercion. Any comments or reflections on that? Can capitalist markets be coercive, and is that a problem? Let's look at the bribery objection. What's the problem with bribery? Think back to your early semester days, some months ago. It doesn't help anyone.
It's like a cycle of, it just makes, it's not good for the lower party, because they just keep them on the back to the same place.
Good. Okay, so there are several things that are the matter with bribery. Okay, and Matthew's saying, look, one problem with bribery is that it creates cyclical expectations that lead to a functionally trapping system. And that's totally correct, and you can see that on display in the developing world. And in this country as well. Bribery takes place here. Who am I kidding? Another problem with bribery is that it makes society less efficient. It harms all those who are not a part of the immediate bribing relationship. It leads to poverty. Is paying kids for good grades or paying people to lose weight, is that bribery?
No,
Why not?
that was more of a rewarding system than bribery.
More of a reward than a bribe. Thanks. Can you elaborate on that? I actually tend to agree with you. Can you elaborate though?
Well, a reward is when you achieve something that is, generally speaking, that is beneficial to an individual, that is yourself or to the individuals around you.
Okay.
And then you receive something that you desire, and that can be seen as a reward. But if it does harm to others, or it causes an unfair competition, that can be seen as bribery, in my opinion.
I totally agree with you. I would not consider paying kids for good grades or paying people to lose weight to be a bribe in the traditional sense, like what we were looking at earlier this semester when we were looking at the Siemens case and other cases.
Yeah, I think rewarding system is good, but definitely bribery system is bad. But too much too much of a reward can start twisting the mind of,
Moderate rewards,
Exactly.
if they are not used to such an extent that they displace other reasons for doing something,
Exactly, and that can either cause,
can be of value. Yeah.
maybe that could possibly bring bribery into the competition to get that reward at the end. So,
Yeah. So let me give you guys an illustration of this. My pastor, when I was growing up, paid his children each year to do their personal devotions, to read their Bibles and pray each day. which is a good practice anyway. He paid them, if I remember right, $1,000 at the end of the year if they met like a whole year. And it was like incremental, so most of them didn't actually get $1,000. He had 4 kids. Most of them got like $400 at the end of the year. Okay. Now, is he bribing them? Well, there's no unfair competition. It's not as though others are being displaced from this. Everybody has equal access to it. Is he incentivizing them in a way that displaces their other motives? Well, maybe. Quite possibly they are reading their Bibles and praying for the sake of the monetary reward. Is it worth it so as to encourage good habits? Well, his kids got really good at doing that every day. They got good habits. I intend to coerce my children softly in the same way, actually. I intend to pay them to motivate them to do the same. But I think that such a system can become toxic. I'm with Daniel when the monetary incentive is so great that it displaces any natural desire to get good grades or any natural desire to lose weight for its own sake. Yes?
Daniel using the word reward made me think of what the difference between bribery and reward.
Mm-hmm.
So I googled it fast and I wanted to agree. It says bribes are typically not planned ahead and are to meet middle ground for a crisis. So that's their major difference.
So bribes are typically not planned ahead?
Right, and are
Oh.
meant to middle in with a crisis.
Yeah, so that's a great question. What is the precise difference between a bribe and a reward? I would say a lot of bribes are not planned ahead, but some companies set apart a slush fund for precisely the sake of bribes. So I think that might be a little narrow. I would say, just off the cuff, this is me shooting from the hip, but I would say the difference is this. A bribe is something that is given so as to make the market unfair. So if you're elbowing out competitors for a contract with your bribe, that's a bribe because others don't have equal access to the good in question because of your bribe. A reward, by contrast, is something that can be available to all who meet certain criteria. So General Electric paying people to stop smoking, I guess a better example would be lose weight because not everybody smokes in the first place. But if it's equally available to all GE employees, that strikes me as being more of a reward than a bribe because there's no unfair competition that's achieved by virtue of the monetary payment. Yeah. Any last thoughts on the day? We did not get through chapter 2. We're going to have to save that for next week. Got a lot more to go there. Any last thoughts on what we talked about? Cool. You guys all go in peace. It's great to see you. I think for some of us it is nap time. So go back to your dorm room and have a nice snooze.